Oh.
Okay, well, this is the last roundtable of the day, and I'd like to welcome Chris Hirsch from Holland, Hahn and Wills, who's going to be hosting this. We are expecting one more person to come on into the group. Education is massive in Kingston. We are very blessed with a lot of fantastic educational facilities and schools. And as we all know, education has really been at the sharp end of the COVID situation. So I think Chris is going to lead on this, looking at how education is currently kind of adapting to what's been going on, and just looking at these different perspectives from different schools, from places like the college, just seeing how we can go forward. The youth and the education of the youth is paramount to how we kind of grow as business communities and how we represent them. So I'm really looking forward to this. Chris, I'll leave it in your very capable hands, and this is going to be interesting, really good. Thank you for coming along.
Thanks, Forbes. Right, well, I think what we're going to do first of all is just have a very brief introduction from everyone around the table. And if I could ask you, Mike, just to introduce yourself. You're muted, I think, Mike.
Sorry, yes, I am. Okay, that's a good start. Right, I'll start again. My name's Mike Tweedale. I'm the principal at Kingston College. Kingston College is the general further education college in Kingston upon Thames. It's quite a large college, about 2,600 16 to 19-year-old, looking at study programs, apprenticeships, higher education and adult programs. So I've got a slightly different view on this to the schools. That's me.
Fine. And thank you. Sean, if you could introduce yourself.
Hello, my name's Sean, Richard Challoner's School. Richard Challoner's is a all-boys school for students 11 to 16, and we have a mixed sixth form, generally academically quite successful school, and a big focus on what I call the wider curriculum.
Thank you. Anthony.
Yep, I'm Anthony Fitzgerald. I'm the lead on careers and universities at Kingston Grammar School, which is a successful co-educational independent school locally. I'm also a member of the Career Development Institute, and I sit on the UCAS Schools Advisory Group, which is particularly interesting at the moment. So.
And Clive. Clive, could you do the honours?
Okay, I was just unmuting. Yes, my name is Clive Suppling. I chair an educational charity called Young Enterprise. I should say I chair the Richmond and Kingston arm of what is a national charity, which brings introduces financial and entrepreneurial type schools into schools. We're quite well represented across Kingston. And I think from the last figures, we were represented in more than 50%, no, about 60% of the schools. That is across the two boroughs. Although not relevant to Kingston as such, I'll also mention that I am the chair of a large state primary school in Sunbury.
Thank you, Clive. Now, Sophie's I think just joined us, but we can't see you, Sophie. Can you hear us? Answer came there, none. I think we're going to assume Sophie's not there. And I'll tell you how I want to kick off, actually. It's just a bit of luck. And what we want to do is look at this whole COVID thing in terms of long-term benefits, long-term harm, but also we're going to take advantage of some short-term knowledge. Before I get on to that, Sophie, hi, could you just introduce yourself to everyone? You may be muted. No, I think while we're trying to sort that out, I was going to just go on to to Anthony, because you've just come back from a meeting regarding university admissions, and I think that's a really positive thing.
Yes.
If you could just talk through that, I thought it was very interesting.
Yes, obviously there's big anxiety over entrances this year, particularly whether large numbers of students are going to defer their places, which we're hearing a lot in the press. But the UCAS statistics bear out that that's not the case, certainly not yet, with, you know, fewer numbers than last year deferring, and a movement, an increasing number of students deciding to undefer. So they decided they wanted to go in 2021, and they're going this year. We're hearing anecdotally all sorts of advantages that students are seeing, and obviously we want as many students to go this year as possible. It's the bottom of decreasing numbers of students in the 18. It's going to start going up next year. So I think with universities providing more and more understanding of how they're going to teach, the students are realizing that, you know, they want to go. I had one boy who didn't want to go up to Manchester, but then when he realized that, you know, he would actually be going there and wouldn't just be in his front room, that there would be on some level a move to uni. Some students are saying, oh, well, it'll be a smaller cohort. The teaching numbers will be smaller. We'll come out as a graduate group and more likely to get into jobs. So for the next year group, we really do want to see as many as possible going into university, and it's looking like it's moving in that direction at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anthony,
Sean,
it's
how
Clive.
are your students?
That's really interesting. Have all of the universities say that they will accommodate students, because there's all sorts of different thinking going on here, that perhaps some of them will have to stay at home and you know, sort of key in remotely, and therefore not get the usual university experience. But that's wrong, is it?
Well, it's changing all the time. I think more and more campuses are wanting to have students on campus. They don't want open days, because those are like mass gatherings and difficult to manage and control. But, you know, students in their study rooms, it just seems to be counterintuitive to have a distanced refreshers week, but somehow they're seeing that you know, they'll get some sense of interaction with their colleagues, and it could move to normal teaching as soon as possible. The fact that there's no lectures available, I think, isn't going to be a major issue, because lectures are mostly recorded anyway, and students don't always go to lectures, and they can review them anyway. But it's the whether they get into the labs. So I know Nottingham has stopped medics deferring, because they thought, well, what's the point of me going this year, because I'm not going to get the hands-on. So if they do want to defer, then they have to reapply, and I'm sure that will put them off. So it will depend on the course, obviously, how practical it is, as possibly to how much interaction they'll get at the university.
And Sean, how are you finding with your students and them viewing the future?
Obviously, it depends very much on the age of the student and how they see things. I was talking to some of our outgoing year 13s at the weekend, and they're all seeing it from very different perspectives. Some of them are saying they're thinking that they're going to defer their entry because they don't want to spend the first term with online lectures, paying £9,000 a year for that privilege. Some of them are saying that they want to just get on and get up and crack on with it. So I think it's all very different. I think one of the things I'm more concerned about whether they go this year or next year is that for our current year 11s and our current year 13s, is they've missed out on some really important rites of passage that I think will have an impact on them and how they view things and how they move forward as individuals. Because so what you like about examinations, but actually that sense of achievement of working hard for your examinations, getting that envelope, opening it, seeing the results, and then celebrating all that hard work is a really important part of the process, and they've kind of been robbed of that, and I think that will in some ways have an impact.
We were earlier on, there was a session about the arts and culture and community, and how badly this could affect Kingston, and it occurred to me that obviously the culture side of school is everything for students, and perhaps Sophie, what sort of ways can one look at to continue that, or has that culture disappeared for students, or are they coping and just finding new ways of interacting?
Can you hear me now?
Absolutely perfectly.
Fantastic. Hi guys. I'm sorry we had technical
Not
issues
at all.
there. My end, but anyway, Sophie Kavanagh, I'm head teacher of the Kingston Academy, relatively new school, 11 to 18, but we haven't actually opened our sixth form yet. We're opening that in September, and we're in a trust with Kingston University and the local authority. I think it's been pretty hard hitting for our year 11s. For particular the nuance of us being a new school, but I'm going to set that aside. I think pupils have been pretty resilient in adapting to this new world of working with technology. I think the teachers, but that's what concerns me about all of this, is that everyone's celebrating our newfound working with technology, and actually we're human beings, and we need to interact, and we need to mix and socialize, and bump into each other and have those discussions and disagreements, and that's can only really be done effectively, in my view, together. And I worry about those employability skills, and employers wanting to kind of move away from putting people together and getting them working from home because they're people to do that. But I think for our year 11s, or our students, they've adapted well, but it's finding a balance with moving to this new world of technology and remembering that those softer skills are just still so important. And for us, we're trying to get them to focus on what's in their control, and really proving themselves in their post-16, and not worrying about whatever comes out of those GCSEs, because if they get hard done by on those GCSEs, if they're suppressed, or they have their A-levels, they have their BTECs, they have their level 3 courses where they can prove everybody wrong or right or whatever. And I regret really that they're being given the opportunity to sit in the autumn series, because I'd much rather they focused on their post-16 studies. But
Sean, you wanted to come in on that?
Yeah, I think it's really important what Sophie's saying, and I think Sophie knows that I'd agree with that. That I really worry about this cultural disenfranchisement that some of these young people are going to have, and you see some of the stories that some schools will be stripping back their curriculum for their year 11 next year, and maybe getting rid of modern languages or music or art or DT, and these things are the subjects that grow the skills in our young people that employers want. I mean, GCSEs and A-levels get you through the door, but it's the character you are and the ability to empathise and with others. That's what employers need. And if you don't do drama and art, you're never going to develop those skills, and we've got to be really careful about that moving forward, so that we don't damage a whole generation of young people.
Sean, I have a response to that, because that's close to my heart, because the last thing we want to see is students coming out of school who are less employable. They've got to be more employable.
Yeah,
Totally.
Could I just ask Mike to come in, because Mike, of course, you've got a different sort of student demographic, and with its own very broad issues, and perhaps you could outline some of those and how you're dealing with them.
So I'll pick up on some of the points again that Anthony started with, and then Sophie mentioned as well. So Kingston has quite a lot of students that go to higher education. Around 1,200 or so students go to higher education from Kingston each year. So one of the things that we found is there was that initial reluctance to go, and there was concern about their online learning. I think one of the things that's happened is A lot of people pulled out. I think Anthony identified that early and are now going back and taking up their places. I think they've learned through the last 3 months to be more comfortable around their online learning, and they've realised that actually there has been a benefit to it. It's not, and I think all of us would agree that face-to-face contact is going to be always the first and best and the most useful, and it will certainly disadvantage students if they don't get that. But the idea of them going on, we're certainly been encouraging our students, if they were going to go to university, to not hold back, to go for it now. They'll still get into the situation where there's an opportunity for them to live, if they're going away from home, to live in accommodation, even if they're not going to every class, and do it remotely. I noticed that Martha's mentioned that actually lots of the local universities, certainly at Kingston, a lot of students are living at home anyway, and the campus experience is very different. There are some very specific campus universities, Bath, for example, or Loughborough, but Kingston's not one of those. And so there's a different experience. And the fact that they're getting online learning, they're getting very good online learning. And as long as it's supplemented with face-to-face contact, we definitely recognise that students who've been engaged in that face-to-face contact, and the students who've come back to us, we've had a couple of hundred in the last couple of weeks back at college. They've really enjoyed being back. They've really missed it. They've really wanted to do it. So it's really important that we do that, and we hope to get people back, full time into education face to face as soon as possible when it's safe. I don't think the universities will not be doing that for a whole year. I know most of them are sort of saying that they'll start off with this blended learning approach, but they'll still get the university experience. And everything Sean's been saying about sort of the additional skills, the soft skills, the student enrichment, the student engagement, the work experience, the employability skills, those are all things that we can still encourage, and they can certainly do some of those online with all these new online platforms, but it will be good for them to get back eventually in.
Thank you for that. Could I just broaden it out now, because one of the areas that we hear about is digital poverty, and now I think I'm talking more about younger students rather than university students, and I wondered whether the digital poverty is a purely sort of black and white thing in terms of technology, or is it really a broader thing, which is just a poverty of help from home as well as digital ones. And I wondered if that is the case, and how you guys are doing things about that. I may be completely wrong, so please tell me if I am. And who would like to chip in first?
I mean, I'm happy to sort of come in. We're very lucky, Challen, that our parents are very engaged with learning, and generally our catchment is reasonably affluent. So where we've had children who are in digital poverty, we've provided them with devices, or in some cases we've even provided them with internet and things. What I do worry about are the very small minority at our school where parents are not engaged with education, and they're not encouraging their sons mostly, and daughters in the sixth form, to engage in a way that we would hope they would. And I do think there will be, across the country, different schools with larger groups that are in digital poverty. There will be a big gap that will need to be plugged for those who are in that category. But what I would say on that, though, is we must be really careful not to rush at just plugging the academic gap, because there will be social and emotional gaps. There'll be well-being gaps. There'll be things that children have witnessed at home that they'll need putting back together again. And if we just rush in and say, well, we've got to get them back up to here with their learning, we're going to miss a lot of stuff for those really disadvantaged students. Sophie, I don't know if you wanted to.
Yes, I mean, much like Mike, the premise of our school is that we're strong on technology. All of our children have Chromebooks. That's the expectation. They couldn't possibly have engaged as a pupil here from the get-go had they not had that device. So we were fairly seamlessly able to make that switch. So, I think perhaps we're in a unique situation. Even with our disadvantaged pupils, they all have a device. They had one when they joined the school. I guess it's a bigger problem nationally across the piece as to how digital will impact other pupils coming through. And I think that's the challenge, is that we know that GO's policy of premium has not had the impact that it was intended to have. And millions and millions of pounds have been put into pupil premium and pupil premium grants. That money is very welcome in schools, and I think schools make good use of it, but it hasn't had the impact that it was there to achieve. So I think how we address the digital poverty, the gaps that have emerged, both social and emotional, the mental health as well as academic, we need to think very carefully about a longer term view as to how we do that. As a society, rather than thinking chucking money at it is going to be the answer.
Chris, I'd just like to comment there, because this issue of disadvantage and also children with special educational needs is one that I'm very familiar with from the primary school that I chair out in Sunbury, where around 25% of the pupils are disadvantaged. And a similar percentage, and unfortunately many of the same, also with special educational needs. Now, during the many of those years are now back in school, but during the height of the crisis, the school was sending them all weekly educational packs. And that kind of got round this issue of having a lack of IT tools at home. But of course, many of the connections that the teachers needed to make with the children did rely upon digital connections. But what I want to do is fully endorse the points that both Sean and Sophie were making, that there are many other issues other than the question of technology here, because so many of these children were at home where they, frankly, it wasn't a learning environment at all, where perhaps they were with single parents, and some of them are having quite challenging sort of educational needs, which really could not be met through remote forms. So what is becoming evident is, as these children are coming back into school, is how much the gap has opened up. But it's not because of the technology. It's because of the many other severe disadvantages that they already have, and they've been amplified, magnified during this crisis.
Anthony.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that we're terribly missing our work experience program, because, yeah, we've had some virtual work experience opportunities, and that's an interesting development, but they absolutely do need to have that. They get that confidence. We have students on who go on placements, as I'm sure my colleagues would say. They come back different people. They feel that they've worked in this adult environment. They've had their technical skills, whatever they are, endorsed. They've been able to do things that some adults couldn't do. The confidence is enormous. Communication. But we've had to delay our work experience to October. But a number of students have done placements virtually, which has been positive, and it's made me think that we could, increase the opportunities for work experience, because some small companies can't necessarily have somebody in for work. So it may be a thing to develop as well in the new world, to have students on projects. I think they said earlier, build back better, to have placements done. Well, you've got a little group of students, they might come in at the end of the week, but they've been doing a project virtually. So that's a chink of positive light out of it. But I think going in to employers is what we want.
I personally would be very keen on looking at that sort of area, because yes, it's an issue for us, and I'm trying to work out whether or not maybe it's more of a form when someone comes in for a placement, of almost like mentoring. So there is only a one-to-one experience in terms of meeting with people in the office. So that makes it a bit safer, but there's the project work and the reporting back. Is that, Mike, is that something that you're looking at?
The work experience, I agree, the work experience has been a real issue. So we have about 1,000 students who go on work experience each year. So 200 of those go on industrial placements, which are up to 10 weeks long, and about 800 or so go in for 1 to 2 weeks, or they go 1 day a week, depending on what their sort of situation is. And we've just had to stop those. Most of the employers have stopped all work experience. There have been some virtual ones, but they're very, very small numbers. We believe that the employability skills that they get through that, and that we then reference within their curriculum, because we refer back to things all the time, are really, really crucial, and students definitely have missed out. And whether we can get back to that, we know that there's going to be a huge number of unemployed adults, as well as unemployed 16 to 18s and graduates. There's going to be far fewer opportunities for students to do work experience in the future. We've got to get back to enable them to do that, because that's really valuable work experience. It's really valuable employability skills. So there is a real issue around trying to do that. Whether the internships that the Chancellor's about to talk about, the 2 billion for the 6 months internships, will have an impact, and we'll have to see the detail in that. We're certainly finding that a lot of students who would have progressed from us this year have identified through their one-to-ones and through their exit interviews, their virtual exit interviews with staff, that they are choosing to come back next year, and because they're uncertain about their future. And what's interesting is, and I'm curious about the schools, is we have around about 1,200 or so students who start with us at the beginning of every year that come from schools. Lots of our students who are at college are saying they're returning because they feel comfortable in this environment and they want to come back. I'm wondering whether schools are experiencing this, and whether you're expecting more students in the 6th form to stay who possibly would have gone to a general further education college instead, but maybe feeling a little bit more vulnerable and feel that they don't want to take that risk.
I think
okay, so it's pretty anecdotal. It's pretty anecdotal. I mean, we suspect that may be the case, that emotionally the children just aren't ready to take that leap into going into colleges, and that they will seek sort of refuge with us because we know them and they'll feel safe. Then emotionally they might not be ready. So, but it's purely anecdotal. We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, my gut feeling is that. Sorry. That we retain most of the students who are able to come back to us anyway. So the students that we provide courses for. So it would only be the students who we really don't have an academic offer for. So I don't think they would be able to come back anyway. So I think I can't see us being hugely affected at all, either way.
Yeah, I think one of the issues certainly is the apprenticeships. I think apprenticeships are going to be very badly affected. Certainly we have around about 20% of our apprentices have identified that they'll be coming next year. So we're losing about 80% of those because the companies are just saying, we just simply don't have the resources. We're not going to deliver apprenticeships. So I think there's going to be a real hit on that this year. So which will be interesting to see how that's picked up by the government.
Clive, putting your young enterprise hat on, how are you looking at providing your courses in schools and educational establishments?
Well, of course. Of course, COVID has had a major impact on us, because we had to overnight stop all class-based delivery, and that was important for us. Our Learn to Earn program, one you're, I know, familiar with, Chris, which is going in with into classes of what I've forgotten the year numbers now, but ages 14 through to 15, which is really kind of helping them raise their awareness about what the world of work is about, what sort of careers are out there. It does some kind of early stage, sort of profiling was what type of job they might be suited to, etc., etc. It's a big fun day. It's a huge learning experience experience for them, and very insightful as well. And I'll take that as an example, because that, when we're now thinking, well, are we going to be able to deliver that? Okay, in the coming academic year, are we going to be? Do we have access to? Are we going to have access to classes? So we're looking at how we can digitize that, and it's a massive task. I mean, there are so many elements to that program, and we need to be fairly confident that we're going to. That it is going to be worthwhile the investment in completely redoing it so that it can be delivered remotely. So that's one which has been particularly badly hit. Our flagship program, which is the company program, which probably many of you around the table are familiar with, that's kind of a fate runs throughout the year. So training sessions have been set up for our volunteers or business advisors who work in the schools with the team that are in the company program, and preparing them for being what we call advisors. So working remotely, because it's looked almost certain that we're not going to have, our volunteers won't have access to classrooms, at least during the autumn term. How it pans out for the rest of the academic year is obviously very unclear. But we are actually hopeful, nevertheless, that because the students themselves, because they're likely to be in year bubbles or whatever, they will be able to kind of, sort of do the company program much as they would have done previously, except it's the mentoring and the advice that is going to have to come remotely. We run learning workshops for them periodically on things like selling skills and sustainability. Again, we can probably shift those quite easily to be delivered remotely if we have to. So I'd say with the company program, yes, we could do it. And then, of course, we've got a lot of digital resources already, particularly those which are providing financial education. And we've kind of done a lot to improve those, both to provide a better user experience. Of course, like all charities, we're hitting hard times as well in terms of our funding. So we need all the help we can get on that side. But in terms of our product, it presents different challenges depending upon what it is. But overall, we feel we can look forward to still being there and offering that kind of those wider opportunities for students to enhance their employability and their financial skills, okay, for many years ahead.
Thank you. With your indulgence, I wouldn't mind changing tack a bit and indulge in a bit of futurology. And without trying to make light of COVID in any way, shape or form, what would be really nice to hear is think, right, what is it that has come from this horrible situation, which is going to be good for the future? And anything you like. It would just be nice to have a really positive thinking about.
I think,
Mike, please.
I would say working together. Yeah. Sorry.
I agree. Working together will come back. I think also resilience. A lot of our young people who perhaps weren't very good independent learners will have found out that they can self-direct, they can self-motivate. And I also think that they'll appreciate school much more. A lot of people who have been at home being taught by their mum or dad will actually go, actually, my teachers aren't too bad. I'd quite like to be in the classroom with them and with my mum around me. So I think that'll be a real positive.
I agree. I mean, I think that.
I think where I was heading was.
Sorry, I think that our children have really missed it and been a surprise to them. I think that parents have really been put in the hot seat, me included, in terms of homeschooling. And you really do appreciate this is a profession, and our teachers are experts, and that has come across greatly, I think, and I think that's a real positive, that people realise that it isn't easy, this job, and that we've got great leaders, great teachers, and that schools, the one thing that technology won't change hugely. I think there's been lots of positives in terms of efficiencies and new ways of learning, but fundamentally you can't beat chalk and talk and interaction and that human face-to-face.
So I think the appreciation, as both Sean and Sophie said, of people, of children coming back to school and young adults coming back to school is critical. One of the other positives that we've really had is our staff moved from teaching face-to-face to online in about 2 days. And within a fortnight, they were effectively running huge numbers of different platforms. All of them have been on this huge learning curve. We have a very effective virtual learning environment anyway. We use Moodle. Lots of our students have identified that they really appreciate using that anyway. Interestingly, 45% of them enjoyed the collaborative stuff, but 55% enjoyed the independent stuff that they were given and the additional, self-directed study. But what that's done for our staff is it's made them, they've had to buckle down in some respects and learn lots of different IT techniques. So there's been a huge amount of CP online learning going on right the way through the last 3 months that they've really engaged with. We know that will just benefit the students when they come back. We still think that face-to-face is absolutely the most important way of doing it because of the engagement, but actually as a benefit, as an additional benefit, what they can now do online and the resilience and the digital literacy that young people have, even if the poverty might be on the practical or the hardware, they're clearly Generation Z are much more digitally literate than, and we have a number of staff who are now just as literate as young people, and that was never the case in the past. So that's a really positive move forward for us.
Anthony, and then Sean.
Sorry, yeah, no, I was just thinking the things we're learning from technology that can benefit us positively as a Kingston community. I mean, the work experience opportunities, how we work together as schools to do events, so that we share our cultural capital. So that if we do an event, I know Chessington College runs one of the expos, so it's great to get employers into that area. But we could do our end of the borough. I think the time for working alone on careers and higher education work is. It doesn't benefit everybody if you work individually. So if you have an engineering fair and you get lots of wonderful Kingston departments on engineering, aerospace, and whatever, you want everybody from any school in the borough to come along that wants to come along. So more of that stuff, I think, would be good.
Sean.
So as I was going to say, another positive that could come from this, if there is anyone with the political courage to take it, is there a moment to pause now and really think about what do we want from education? What do we want education to do? Do we want to judge our schools purely on academic outcomes? Do we want Ofsted inspectors coming in as they do now? The profession is so much more professional now than it was 20 years ago. So here's a really important time where we could just say, let's take 2 years, let's have a wide-ranging conversation with educational professionals, with parents, and say, actually, what measures do we want to of our children coming out of school? How do we want schools to work collaboratively to support one another rather than a regime of inspection? And there really is a moment that if someone has the courage to seize it, but I fear that no one will.
You might be right.
Oh.
We have to push the agenda. So I think that's a lot of, there's been tremendous support. I mean, I followed the unions as well. So ASCL, the Association of School and College Leaders, there's been an awful lot of lobbying from the Association of Colleges as well. There's been a lot of lobbying of government that they're certainly listening to education. or seem to be listening to education. There is a keen an attitude that they recognise what teachers and what the education system has done over the last 3 months. I think it's got more credibility now than it has. It's certainly got more credibility with parents, who've, as Sophie was identified, who've been fighting a real battle for the last 3 months and are now recognising actually, how difficult it is to manage 30 students in a class. Whereas they, sometimes people who've been to school sometimes think that, well, I went to school, I could do that, and it's not always as easy as it appears. So I think there is greater credibility in the professionalism of the sector, and we've got to really build on that and drive those opportunities. I just want to pick up on something that Sharon's been identifying on the feeds going past, which is there will be a lot of students who really struggle through this. Certainly we have at Kingston, we have about 450 students on a safeguarding list that we've been consistently dealing with. About 40% are having regular contact. And there will be students who don't do as well in their GCSEs, as was identified earlier, who will be worried about going on to level 3. Are there more level 2 courses? And that's where I think certainly the colleges are more flexible. Schools are less flexible in being able to run different cohorts. But the colleges, because they're larger, we were certainly expecting that we although at Kingston we have a large level 3 cohort, we're expecting level 2 take up a little bit more, so that we can help those students who don't want to step up or aren't able to step up because they didn't get the GCSE grades. So I do think there's a lot of support, and the idea that schools and colleges are now working more effectively together, is only a positive. We should be collaborative as much as we can be, rather than competitive, and there's a lot more collaborative working, I think.
Sophie.
Yeah, I mean, I think my time in Kingston is really, just to draw on what Mike has said, what I've been most impressed about is the collaboration. And, you're getting that from the private sector, the colleges sector, the state school sector, the selective schools. There is a real will to work together and support one another. And I fully endorse Anthony, and there's some of the work we're doing with Kingston Grammar, that sharing, and that, share the wealth, share the experience, share that cultural capital. I think, we could stand out really with the borough in really taking this as an opportunity to come together and support, and, the potential for those needs, really rising in the summer because they haven't got the confidence to go to the college and they can't come back because, we just can't support them, not as flexible as quickly. That's going to be really, really crucial in terms of our work over the summer and working together. So I think that's a real strength already in Kingston, but I think we should continue that momentum of collaboration and supporting one another.
In terms of the business sector, if you could wave a wand, what is it that you would want from us in terms of collaboration?
Well, we run a business network at school that for our students, and it has 3 purposes. It allows us to connect our students with different businesses to get advice and to talk to people and things like that, and that's really, really helpful. But there is the purpose that their business gets access to our school community as well. So there's an opportunity for them to have a new audience, and then there's the opportunity to sponsor the school in some ways as well. So certainly from our perspective, engaging with business has a number of really productive outcomes that hopefully both for the business and for the school. And I would encourage schools to set up their own business networks. Ours has been incredibly productive.
Thank you. I think you're muted, Mike.
Sorry. Kingston College has been a patron member of the borough, actually the first patron member. We've always felt very strongly that we would like to work. We want to work with the borough and with businesses within the borough, and that's really for us. We know that there is an opportunity for our students to work within local businesses because we have huge numbers of students having to do work experience. The the businesses themselves are not only, they are really benefiting from that, because they're finding that actually those students who are coming in doing live projects, doing short-term work experience, doing long-term, they're really benefiting from having those students doing that. And the opportunity, and it will be really interesting to see what the 6 months internship placements, how they work when the detail comes out later today. But the opportunity for that. But the other opportunity for businesses and the collaboration is the same as the university in some respects, is that we can do bespoke courses. We know that there'll be a lot of people who have cut down their workforce and they may need short courses and things. So a college, and certainly the college and a university, are delivering short courses to enable people to pick up some of those skills, whether they're IT skills or whether they're soft skills. They're working additionally for those for businesses, to support businesses, and it's just a matter of sort of picking up the phone and saying, we want to run this sort of thing. Could we do that? So that's our plug for working with the business from FE.
Thank you. Anyone else on that subject? Let me.
Chris, I just want to pick up a thread from Sean again, where he was effectively saying that really the school should be producing more rounded individuals rather than just academic stars, which of course is something that I completely agree with. And Young Enterprise is there trying to help instill students with around a set of skills than they get just from their academic studies. Because as before I retired, I was working in the world of international consultancy. And I know that the hardest task in a people business is recruiting the right people. The people issue and the skills that they have is the major issue, okay, which is challenging employers, not just in Kingston, actually getting people into the business. And what do they want? They want people, okay. They want people who are resilient. They want communicators. They want people who can do teamwork, okay. And this is all about attitude, state of mind, and they need to be have the ability to develop those skills within the school system. A first-class degree is great, but unless you've got the right attitudes to work and a bit of experience to go with it, preferably, then you're a big risk for an employer.
One of the things I was going to ask you talk about is whether or not there are specific subjects which in the future might be more beneficial to students than others. But actually, I'm going to change that and say, if you acquire those softer skills, does it nowadays matter which subjects you take at A level or equivalent?
Well, there's no.
I think that's. No.
Sean, please.
Sorry.
I was going to say, there's no doubt that employers judge certain qualifications differently depending on what they are. So if you've got a level in physics, maths, and economics, that will be looked oftentimes more favourably than BTECs by some employers. So we know those judgments are made. Whether they're correct or not is another matter. But whenever we see lists used by employers of what they in the people they employ, they're all the things that Clive were talking about. They're all the things that Mike and Sophie try to develop in our young people. And I say to our students here often, if you leave here with brilliant grades, but you're a bad person who won't be of service to others, we failed you on every level. But if you leave here with the grades you deserve, but you are of service to others, then we've done the job. And that's what schools should be about. We've got to be really careful of just saying, what qualifications, of course, are important. Only a small part of education, in my view.
Yeah, I fully endorse that. I think that's the responsibility, isn't it? Every child is unique. Every child has their own interests, and they should be allowed and encouraged to seek the subjects that they wish to seek, whatever they may be. But sitting underneath that and around the children is that holistic education of what it is to be a decent human being and knowing wrong from right and having a good moral compass and all of those things. That, and I think maybe, the relationships and sex education curriculum that's now statutory in September, there's a huge area of that, and that is fundamental to our children, whether they're physicists or artists or dancers or whatever it might be. So I think, that the relationship part of that is so important. How do you have relationships with your peer group, with your teachers, with your employers, with your, so there's underlying, sitting behind every child's interest, those softer skills and just knowing how to be a decent person, and as Sean says, of service. And that's what we should be seeking in our young people.
We're all agreed.
In terms of courses, I think. So in terms of courses, a lot of universities are saying, where are all the arts and humanities students? But of course, we've had a real agenda, probably rightly, to push STEM, and our numbers doing A-level maths go through the roof each year. And we're saying we really need to be pushing languages and humanities more. But the agenda has been to go with the science end. And I think we've lost a lot of the qualities that those subjects develop, and the unis are saying, well, that we don't have the people to come on the courses. That's where we're at with that.
It sounds like.
Can I just pick up something?
Well,
one of the comments around sort of the difference between qualifications at 16 to 19. So if we're looking at sort of A levels or the BTEC equivalent qualifications, vocational qualifications, they serve a different purpose, and different students will do better depending on which one they take. So if you like exams and you like doing something, then A levels will work. If you are more coursework, you're more practical, then BTECs will work. But the consequence is that within either of them, and certainly what we do at Kingston is we teach the employability skills. There are sort of 7 key employability skills, that have been identified. And what we try to do is we teach them through the curriculum. So it's not that you're doing curriculum on one side and then you're learning these additional skills or enrichment activities on the other. They're all part and parcel of the same thing. They're integrated. They are sort of, problem solving, presentation skills, communication skills. Those are the sorts of things that are done through the curriculum, and they have become ever more important. So I think in some respects, yes, of course, the qualification is important, and if you're doing a hard skill, doing a hard course, an academic course, and I mean a hard science one, then you've got to have the knowledge, but you also have to have the ability to present that information, and you need those social skills, and we really focus on those at Kingston, because they're the ones that will get you through the door, or they're the ones that will get you to the top of the list. Once you've got the qualification, it's then how you present the fact that you've got that qualification that makes a difference. So I think it is really important for us not to lose sight on that. And at risk of agreeing with Ofsted, I think the new Ofsted direction around sort of implementation and impact, but it's about the intent. It's about the curriculum intent. What's the purpose of the course? What are you trying to achieve? How are you going to deliver it to have the most impact for those students, so that when they come out, they are employable? And at the end, the employability has got to be critical. We shouldn't be doing anything if there isn't some sort of employability opportunity for them at the end. Whether that is a professor at Cambridge, that's still an employability opportunity, or a researcher. But we've definitely got to be providing those soft skills, and we're much more focused on those. And the work experience is one of the critical elements of that, to enable students to benefit from that and learn those skills.
It's an odd thing about work experience, as far as I'm concerned, that we always, when we have someone either for work experience or for an internship or whatever, because we're always treating it as a one-off, it's really, really hard work. Actually, what we need to do potentially is develop what you could do standing on your heads, which is say, right, okay, here's the system. You can tell whether or not the person with you is enjoying it or not enjoying it. Are you giving them too much work or too little work? What are we trying to get out of this? All the stuff that you do, all of you, all day long. And so a bit of collaboration would make it so much easier for firms like us to take on one after the other. Because once we have the system going, we can just keep running it.
Yes.
Sorry, that was a bit of a rant, but I think we need help, on that, and I'm sure we're not alone.
Yeah, I mean, work experience is a process, very much so. So it's preparing students for work experience, debriefing. A good work experience program isn't just going on placement. I agree. So it's educating the employer who may not be aware, as you're saying, and these are the things that they need to be doing on their placement, and you need to be helping them with. Yeah, it's a mixed bag, I think, sometimes.
I think it's really positive from my point of view, because I've just realized what it is that holds us back from doing more of it. And it's the feeling that we might not be getting it right. Well, we just need to ask. So that's a really helpful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Can we're almost done. I want to finish on a quick question. It seems to me, in terms of education and you as driving that forward and teaching and structure everything for our students, that actually you're going to come out of this with a very, very much higher awareness from the public, and probably a lot more positive, because previously I think a lot of parents, and I was a parent a long time ago, got the information about schooling from either from themselves or from their teenage children, who never replied about what they were doing at any time anyway. And now what you do is become much more exposed. Do you agree with that? And do you think it is positive?
I think
yes, I think it is
from what I've seen,
transparent.
I agree with Sophie. I think it's going to be generally very positive. I think it's going to be very positive. I think parents have seen what schools do. I think they're going to see how difficult it has been for them. And I have to say that the response from our parents has just been overwhelmingly wonderful. They've been so supportive of what we've tried to do, and that sort of working together in partnership with home and school, I think, is just going to be strengthened because of this experience, and it's going to be a good thing for the children.
Well,
so I still think, in further education, students often choose further education because they want to become a little bit more independent anyway. And they want to sort of step out of their comfort zones, and they often do that away from their parents too. So I think, and it's always been a tragedy that I've always felt, that we don't get this sort of same engagement with parents in a further education college that you might in a school, in an academic school where they're very supportive. Having said that, we've had a lot of engagement with parents as well, try to make sure they are supporting them, and we are getting a lot of support, and that's improving. So we're expecting that engagement to continue, and we're now trying to build that base up so that we do get more support. And I think there will be a better understanding going forward.
Thank you. Now look, Clive,
I want to make one quick comment, and I'm wearing my chair of primary school hat. And I think that the parents have gained a great deal more knowledge about education, the teaching of their children through this, and that partnership between school and parents has actually been strengthened. That is quite clear from the school I chair. And one comment I would make certainly to end my piece, is that I have not had to investigate as a chair a single parental complaint, since lockdown.
Wonderful. Good. Now, we're just about to be cut off. So Sean, Anthony, Sophie, Mike and Clive, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. and I'm sure everyone else has. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.